A storm of gunfire and tear gas in a packed urban refugee camp. Israel's raid began early this morning. More than 100 military vehicles entered the camp, say witnesses. It is the most deadly single Israeli raid into Jénine since a new wave of violence hit the region last spring.
We heard gunshots. We fled into the Jénine club and we stayed under siege there for 3 hours. The army besieged us in the club and we heard the sounds of clashes. After about an hour, military bulldozers destroyed cars on both sides of the road, then destroyed the club's wall.
Palestinians say that for some time the Israelis stopped ambulances reaching the wounded, describing the situation as critical. In the aftermath, another part of Jénine camp is seen reduced to wreckage. The Israeli army says it surrounded a building to capture Islamic Jihad militants. A huge gunfight then erupted. The children's ward of a local hospital was hit by tear gas, say health officials, and Palestinian leaders have called for urgent international help, calling this a massacre. Israel says it acted based on precise intelligence of major attacks by Islamic Jihad. The army raids have been near nightly for months now, as Israel says it's been acting to stem the worst spate of attacks in years against its citizens. It had already been a deadly month for Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, with 20 killed so far in January, militants and civilians.
A boy like this should have been able to have his childhood. What happened to that right?
In Dheisheh refugee camp during a raid last week, soldiers shot dead a 13-year-old boy, Amr al-Khamour. The army said some Palestinians threw stones, petrol bombs and explosive devices, but gave no specific account of why the teenager was shot. At the family home, neighbours arrived to mourn.
If a boy hits me with a stone, should I get a pistol and shoot him? There are things that the mind can comprehend. It's beyond belief. To kill a child, to kill a boy. I'm helpless. I'm speechless.
Here, national flags hang beside those of the PFLP, a political and armed faction seen by Palestinians as part of their resistance. It's listed by Israel and the West as a terrorist group. America's top diplomat arrives in the region in days. The US has already said it is deeply concerned about escalating violence. It worries too about a political crisis in Israel, as fears mount of a much further flare-up. Tom Bateman, BBC News, Jerusalem.